And I'm pretty sure it's lifted. Well, it's an American style, likely Chevy. It's a crew cab. It's dark blue or black, and lifted, of course. These youngins here just got too goddamn much money. God damn it. He just fucking, that's him. He just fucking threw something else at me. How good is calling the fucking cops gonna do? What are they gonna do? They're gonna fucking harass me. That's what they're gonna do. Fucking chucked a pumpkin at my goddamn vehicle. This time. Now that's the first thing they threw at me is this over here. I don't know what the hell it is. Looks like a Pepsi with some blue shit in it. I don't know what that blue stuff is, but it's definitely not Pepsi. There's a fucking pumpkin. Looks like somebody watched it happen. There's a pumpkin right there. God damn it. The light here is fucking shitty. It's actually walking across the street. She didn't give me any problems. She didn't yell at me or scream at me. It's a good thing. I'm gonna use this phone here to show you what they're throwing. Let me see if I can make it work. I can't. Alright. Where the hell did they hit it? Probably on the front somewhere. It fucking smacked it hard enough I felt it. I just couldn't see it through that thing there. There's the fucking pumpkin. What a bunch of little dickheads. Probably got their fingerprints on that fucking thing. What's that green shit in it? Fucking horse shit. Oh. Gotta love my fucking life, don't I? Little fucking bastards. I'm pretty sure that was the same truck as last night. Now I'm paranoid of every fucking vehicle that goes by. This is some goddamn horse shit. I'm a fucking human being, goddammit. Instead of pretending I deserve it for recording it, how about understand that I record it because it's happening? God damn it. I live in a pretty shitty fucking country, I'll admit that. No problems whatsoever admitting that. They literally threw something in my vehicle, that Pepsi thing, and then they drove around the block again and threw a fucking pumpkin. I guess you guys can listen to the crap I listen to.
Hey guys, I'm Nick, the owner of Freedom Boat Club.
Well, this
I'm
ain't
Keith,
it.
the membership executive, and we believe life is better.
Hello everyone, it's Mr. G coming at you with another Misconceptions in History, and we are doing a part 2 of submarines. Today we're going to be looking at submarines in World War I, the inter-war period, and World War II. I just want to preface this that I know I'm not going to hit every submarine that was developed during this time period because we are literally talking about dozens and dozens of different designs at this time frame. So I'm just going to try to hit some of the bigger ones and the ones that advance technology. So obviously if I'm going to talk about World War I and submarines, the thing that should come to mind was unrestricted submarine warfare that occurred during this war. However, that is just a small fraction of what happened with submarines during this time frame. So all the major powers at this time were actually developing submarines, and obviously this is still early stages, experimental, but they were all deploying submarines in some capacity. Now the forerunners of this were the British with their A through D class, and honestly the A, B, and C class submarines were really nothing special. They were extremely problematic for the British. They were more like a test bed for what would succeed, and what really did succeed for them was the D class. This class was the first one to use 2 screws for propulsion. It had better maneuverability, better speed, better endurance, and it actually deployed something known as a saddle tank. Now, what's so important about saddle tanks is this actually changed how they did the ballast on the submarine to allow it to sink, balance, things like that. They moved them basically from the top of the submarine to the sides, allowing them to have better balance on the submarine, better for waves, things like that, speed, allowed for more aerodynamics, and this would revolutionize submarine design, and the design was actually used on multiple submarines throughout the world, even until the end of World War II. Now, another odd development by the British was actually a steam-powered submarine, and by that I mean it used oil-fired boilers to power the submarine. The design was pretty much abandoned by the end of World War I. Now, the more obvious and better successful design came from the Kaiserliche Marine, which was the German U-1 and U-series boats, the predecessor to what we think of as a U-boat that the Germans would use during World War II. Now, these went through a series of designs, each more progressive, and they actually built hundreds of different submarines, and the way their design was basically every couple of submarines would just be an improvement on the last few. And this would all culminate into the last series, and I used the U-51 for example here, which these were long-range cruiser-type submarines designed for extended service, heavy-duty operations. The next major contributor to submarine warfare during World War I would be the French, and the French actually had 5 main classes of submarines that they built, and each one of these actually had multiple subclasses. So the French actually designed multiple submarines based off of these 5, and they ended up with dozens and dozens of different designs. And like the Germans, these were just progressive designs. Each one was an improvement upon the previous generation, and the subclasses were improvements upon the others. And the final power to really develop submarines during this time frame would actually be the United States. And the United States was actually behind. A lot of their designs were based off the British. This was actually a common theme before the interwar period. The British would design some type of new ship, like we see with the Dreadnought class battleships, and the United States would basically copy it and try to make their own improvements upon it. Now, of course, World War I would end, the Treaty of Versailles would end it, but actually what came afterwards would be the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922, and this is actually during a time period where there were multiple treaties designed to limit arms, as the world felt that another arms race would lead to another world war. But as it was believed that navies would be the main weapon of the next major war, they basically decided to limit its power. And the United States actually led the initiative, and the idea was to take every major power and limit their naval capabilities. However, the 2 least affected items of the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922 were aircraft carriers and submarines. As aircraft carriers were basically a brand new idea and still experimental, they really weren't seen as a threat yet. And submarines, while extremely hated by multiple nations, including the British, who wanted to ban submarine warfare altogether, were still seen as kind of a novelty, even though the Germans had absolutely wrecked Atlantic shipping during this time frame. They were basically seen as something they felt was going to eventually go away because it wasn't considered civilized. But that doesn't mean people stopped designing submarines. Now, the United States would take advantage of the Washington Naval Treaty to basically finish developing their S-class, which would lead them to the V-boats. Now, the V-boats are actually 9 submarines that are divided into 5 classes. Each class had a different purpose. Now, the last 3, 7, 8, and 9 are actually the most important because every World War II submarine, from the Tambor class to the Tinch class, is based off of the V7 through 9 series. The French also took this time to develop a series of large, ocean-going submarines that were basically for patrol purposes. However, they did develop one unusual submarine, and the Surkov is actually a cruiser-type submarine, and this means that it was actually a mixture of a cruiser ship and a submarine, and it carried a pair of 8-inch guns and a full battery of anti-aircraft weapons. Now, the British actually did a little bit of development, but a lot of theirs was on their smaller classes, like the British L class, and that would become the basis for all their future fleet as well. Now, as the Germans had their hands tied by the Washington Naval Treaty and other armistice treaties and weren't allowed to develop submarines, they actually kind of got around it. They created a dummy corporation that allowed them to build this Spanish submarine based on their designs, which would become the German Type 1. Now, this design would also be used to create the Soviet S-class, their first main submarine. Now, the Japanese actually got German submarines as part of reparations from World War I, but they actually developed their own series of smaller, lighter submarines that they would utilize during development in the interwar period. Now, of course, by the time we get to actually World War II, many nations have actually started to build full fleets. This is where we're going to see the German U-boats start to emerge, like the Type 1, 2, the Type 9, which would become the basis for all future Germans. And when we think of a U-boat, you're probably going to be picturing a Type 9 or some descendant of the Type 9. It is the Type 9 and the boats that were based off the Type 9 that would basically wreck the Atlantic and would force the United States and its allies to develop new tactics to take them on. The British would invest their time in their U-class, but actually more importantly, this would lead to their own British V-class submarine that utilizes that saddlebag hull and would become the workhorse of the British Empire during World War II. Now, the 3 main workhorses of the American navies and their submarine fleet, the Gato, Baleo, and Tinch class, were actually improvements upon each other. The Baleo being an improvement over the Gato, and the Tinch being an improvement over the Baleo class. And the designs of these submarines were so good that the Gato got retired in '69, and there are still Baleo and Tinch classes in the world still being serviced and used. Now, the Japanese did the most interesting things with submarines, and it makes sense. An island country would utilize submarines in the most unusual ways. And so they actually developed a series. They developed strictly transportation. They developed refueling submarines. Now, probably the most interesting one is the I-400 series. Now, when the I-400s were completed, they were the largest submarines in the world and would remain so until ballistic missile submarines would come about. Now, these submarines were so large because of the fact that they were aircraft carriers. They carried 3 amphibious airplanes on board that were designed for long-range attacks. And in fact, the plan for these, once they were built, was actually to attack the United States and its allies and damage their infrastructure. Now, in addition to the 3 aircraft they carried on board, they actually had 8 forward-launching torpedo tubes and a 14-centimeter cannon on board. So they were designed for total destruction. Now, the Japanese actually only managed to launch 2 of them. They did build 3 of them out of the original 18 that were planned, but as the war raged on, they just consumed too much material to keep building these. Now, what they tried to replace them with was the I-201, and these were just high-speed, highly maneuverable submarines that were designed to just wreak destruction on the incoming American fleets and just do as much damage as possible. And the Japanese actually only managed to complete 3 of the intended 23 of these submarines before the war ended. And these actually could have done some serious damage, as they actually had radar, sonar. They could actually detect where the death charge was coming in and where it would hit so they could actually avoid it. They would have been beasts had it not been for the fact that it just ran out of the materials necessary to make them. So there you have it, just a real quick, brief look at submarines from World War I to World War II. I know I missed some, and I'm sorry if I missed some of your favorites or some of the more unusual ones that you like. I know I missed talking about the fact that the Germans tried to create a missile-carrying submarine, or, more about the I-400, which I'd love to do more in the future, and hopefully will. But I do thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to talking to you all the next time.
Why is the air fryer on fire? Oh my! Oh crap! Oh, come on!
I'm former Firefighter John Fields.
Let's get that advertisement. See what's next. Oh, this would be a good one.
Prior to World War II, the Royal Navy of the Netherlands had built its submarines largely in two distinct variants. Submarines with the letter O as a prefix, which stood for Unterzeeboot, I think, basically undersea boat, which is essentially the same thing as the German U-boat designation, except in Dutch, were designed for work in European waters defending the Netherlands itself, whilst vessels with K as a prefix for colonial, spelt in Dutch with a K, were rather self-evidently built for service in the Dutch East Indies. These ships could further be distinguished by the O boats using English numerals, whilst the K boats used Roman numerals in their designations. The two types running in approximate parallel, of course, meant that the numbering doesn't immediately correspond to the launch order and thus the modernity. HNMLS 015, for example, was commissioned about a year before K14, which of course was spelt KXIB. Broadly speaking, the K-boats were larger than contemporary O-boats and could sail further, and the O-boats in turn were somewhat better suited for work in confined and shallow waters. O15, for example, was 610 tons when on the surface, just under 200 foot long and armed with 4 forward and 1 aft torpedo tubes, along with some small caliber deck guns, whereas the K14 class were 865 tons on the surface, a knot faster above and below the waves, and carried an additional stern torpedo tube, plus 2 more in traversing launchers forward of the conning tower, and had a heavier deck gun armament. 2 years prior to the outbreak of war, this policy had actually been abandoned and the O designation was adopted as the standard going forwards. This ended up leaving a slightly odd gap as O16, commissioned at the end of 1936 and larger even than the K14 class, was the last of the older O designation run, and the latest subs under construction were K19 and K20, which were then renamed to O19 and O20 and commissioned as such right before the outbreak of World War II, which meant that the Ks in service terminated with a numerically consistent K18, but there was no O17 or O18 that was built. When the Germans overran the Netherlands, there were thus 3 operational theatres for Dutch subs: home waters and the Dutch East and West Indies. The Dutch West Indies were served by O-boats, and they, plus the Dutch O-boats that escaped in time before the Germans overran various Dutch ports, were rallied to the UK by the Dutch government in exile. They would then fight their own war in the European theatre for the first few years. The larger O16, along with the renamed O19 and O20, together with K7 through K18, were all based in the Dutch East Indies, although K7, 8 and 9 were all in reserve, and K10 had spent much of 1941 under repair and was only rated as fit for local defence duties. With the relocation of the Dutch government to the UK, it was arranged that in the event of war in the Pacific, the Dutch subs would be placed under British operational control, at least for some time, much as the subs that had fled to the UK already were. They had Dutch crews, and their flotilla and fleet commanding officers were still Dutch, but they took general strategic direction from the Royal Navy, such as where their patrol routes were going to be. Exactly when this formally went into effect is still somewhat disputed, with some sources claiming British operational control was given on the 1st of December, before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Others claim that this transfer occurred on the 12th, almost a week after the attack, and still others say that the 7 boats that were sent to what at the time was called the Gulf of Siam were under British control before the war, and the 3 boats that were sent off Borneo remained under Dutch command, at least for a while. One potential square to this particular circle is perhaps that on the 1st of December, the 7 boats in the Gulf of Siam were handed over to British operational control, and the 12th represents when all Dutch subs came under British operational guidance. In more immediate terms, the command of Dutch forces in the East Indies fell to Vice Admiral Conrad Helfrich, who oversaw directly the efforts of the subs, whilst the surface vessels of the Dutch Navy were under the command of his subordinate, Rear Admiral Karel Doorman, who of course then reported to Helfrich. The submarine flotilla was divided into 4 submarine divisions. The first division was made up of O-16, K-17 and K-18. The second division was on paper the largest, with 6 submarines, K-8 through 13, although these were also the oldest, and as mentioned previously, K-8 and 9 were in reserve, whilst K-10 was still under repair. Third division was made up of K-14, 15 and 16, and the fourth division was made up of the latest 2 submarines, O-19 and O-20. K-7 does not appear to have immediately had a divisional assignment, likely because she was the last of the K-5 class and by far the least capable submarine on the station, the other 2 of her class having already been scrapped back in 1938. Now, in 1939, when World War II broke out in Europe, there were 3 potential enemy submarine fleets that confronted Japanese planners: the American, the Dutch, and the British. However, after the attacks on the 7th and 8th of December 1941 marked the start of official hostilities between Japan and everybody else in the Pacific region, the almost 30-strong US Navy submarine force in the area was, 1, already taking losses from bombing in its various ports, as well as 2, trying to rapidly fall back from Japanese advances on land in the Philippines, with many US subs falling back to, and subsequently somewhat overcrowding, Dutch ports in the opening stages of the war. And 3, what operational patrols were mounted were plagued either by the older US S-class submarines having lower performance, which limited what attacks they could conduct with their Mark 10 torpedoes, which did occasionally also run a little bit deep, or else the more modern subs were using the soon-to-be infamous Mark 14 torpedo, which had a long list of issues I've tabulated elsewhere, but which essentially could be described as capable of hitting its target and exploding at the right moment during these opening months of the war, only if the correct rituals had appeased the machine spirit, the moon was in the right phase, the planets were in the right alignment, and the Japanese captain who was in charge of the target vessel had significantly angered merciful Poseidon recently. As for the Royal Navy,
right.
it had prepared a well-trained force of long-range, heavily armed submarines in the run-up to the war, and then been forced to bring them all back to the European theatre over the course of the past year and a half. Total Royal Navy submarine strength at the outbreak of Pacific hostilities stood at a grand total of exactly 0. Although 2 of the T-class, Truant and Trusty, were hastily dispatched from the Mediterranean, they wouldn't arrive in the Pacific until the opening months of the campaign were already over. That left the Dutch as the only one of the 3 major navies who could actually go after the Japanese invasion forces with a collection of well-trained submarines that actually had working torpedoes. The subs that were in reserve were ordered to be brought back into service as quickly as possible. A number of the Dutch submarines were already out on patrol. O-16 and K-17 had been sent to the Gulf of Siam already. K-11, 12 and 13 were in the South China Sea, but were quickly redirected to join the first 2, and O-19 and O-20 were in the Karamata Strait to the southeast of Singapore. K-14 and 15 were off Borneo, and K-16 was just off Surabaya. K-18 was at that moment undergoing some maintenance. This actually represented quite the feat, as it meant that only 2 Dutch submarines were under repair at the time, and every other submarine that was commissioned was already out at sea waiting to find some targets. Unfortunately, most of the submarines in the Gulf of Siam were positioned based on intel reports of the course of Japanese invasion forces, which turned out to be incorrect, and so the Japanese ships sailed by largely unmolested in the first few days of operations. However, O-16 did pick up one of the invasion convoys and opened out on the 8th of December, although that attack was unable to score any hits. But as more and more Japanese ships entered the operational area, more and more targets presented themselves for the aggressive Dutch commanders. We'll now go briefly through the operational histories of the Dutch submarines on a per-boat basis, through to, approximately speaking, the end of February 1942 and the first few days of March, as by that stage ABDA command had been formed, had failed, dissolved, and the Japanese forces had gained footholds in the Dutch East Indies.
Alright, I think these youngins are coming in here to start some shit. Yep. They sure was talking excited over there. I wonder what they just threw. It's a white vehicle, short bed, quad cab. And just pull it out and see what they throw. Oh, they're throwing another pumpkin. And they fucking missed. You've been fucking with me all goddamn night. Fucked with me yesterday too. There's 5 of them in there, 3 boys, 2 girls. Alright, that vehicle right there, that white pickup. So what do you think? Is that a figment of my imagination? Oh, here they come. Did we get their goddamn license plate if I fucking get myself up fast enough? Got it. Well, it's the young gentleman who was threatening me 3 weeks ago. I didn't get the license plate. I got that shit covered. Alright. That's them.
Is that it?
No, that's not them. That's not. It's a different girl in the back. It's got one of them drill things in the back like they had in the back windows, but this one is diamond tread plate looking stuff instead of the, what do they call that, expanded metal? Instead of that, which was like some louvers or something. They also threw a Pepsi bottle with something in it, but I don't know what it is. Some sort of bluish green liquid in it. That right there, whatever it is. Don't look like they broke my window or anything. There's one of the pumpkins right there. And there's another one. Like I said, they threw 2 or 3 of them. I just... Yep. I don't know what all exactly they threw all together, but sounded like they threw something metal that missed my car too, but I don't know what it would have been. I don't see any more pumpkins. Looking in my vehicle just in case. Nope, I don't see any under here.
That's all. You sure you want to park right here where it's all dark?
Well, I'm afraid of getting in trouble if I park over at Safeway, and some of the other places that I've been parking are real far away from town. So I mean, people have a lot easier access to get a hold of me or do messed up stuff because there's less likely to be somebody around. I'm probably gonna go to Safeway real quick and get something to drink, but other than that, I don't know.
Listen, I don't know about long term or whatever, but if you want to park over there where it's lit up tonight, then you can come in and talk to the manager in the morning if they decide they want to or not. That's up to them. But for tonight, I'm in charge, so you can go park over there if that makes you feel a little safer since it's all lit up, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right.
Anyway, I can identify that youngin'. Also, Carlos can identify him as well. It's the youngin' who helped me off the road when I was having back spasms coming out of the jail here. I almost jumped the gun and blamed the wrong folks, but I checked out the grill. It wasn't they'll probably be able to find it on their cameras, whoever's doing it. I don't know if it'll be worth their while or worth their time, but, you know, they're stealing pumpkins and fucking assaulting homeless people and vandalizing they're vandalizing my vehicle again. Thank goodness for some nice folks over at Safeway. On the one hand, I hope they understand, and on the other hand, I hope they never have to understand, because this stuff is hell. Oh, there they just drove by again. I believe. Can't really tell, because that side of my window is fucking foggy as shit. God damn. It sucks being the good guy. A lot sometimes. Well, at least if I'm over in their parking lot. It'd be a lot closer to taking the pumpkins. I better decock my pepper spray. Since I don't gotta spray anybody in the face no more. That would have sucked. I don't want to fucking squirt anybody in the face with this shit. So, in 2022, the police supposedly are investigating some youth assaulting some homeless people. Judge let the kids go. I can positively identify the youngin' who threw the pumpkin. It's a good start. You see how difficult this makes it to do anything? It fucking sucks. Plus, it makes it an imposition for anybody else. And it wastes my gas. There's that too. Gotta make sure my electronics stay charged. And keep an eye out for that vehicle. I knew something was up when they got out and they were talking to some folks in another vehicle. That didn't work. No, that ain't it. Now, this is not as bad as it was in Colorado. Colorado were getting a hold of me and saying, hey man, five people were killed between Denver and Boulder for looking like you. That was before they found Joseph Michael Lopez, who was Natalie's killer. Oh, Charlie and Tiffany are here. That's cool. I'm in the middle of the parking lot. Ugh. Ooh. Shitty. Had some youngins chucking pumpkins and some sort of blue liquid at my vehicle.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. They were grabbing the pumpkins out here and then taking them over there and throwing them at me. I could identify the little bastard that was doing it, but there was 5 of them all together.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that sucks.
It's the stuff I got to turn in. I got it recorded. I just can't get anybody to go in with me to turn it in. At this point, it's got to go even above the state patrol because they won't do it either. They'll keep pretending it's not their job.
How's everything else been going?
Other than that, pretty shitty too.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least the folks here at the Safeway are being nice to me. There's a lot of other people that are really not nice.
Right.
And then all the drugs, like, you know, I get that it's legal, but there's one guy that lives right down the street there that he's pretty out of it. And there's a whole bunch of homeless tweakers over there at his house every night. And I get it, it's warm, you know, but he's having a lot of problems mentally, and he's getting ready to lose his place, and all they're looking at is a place to smoke their shit. Well, I better get back to my vehicle. I parked right in the center of the parking lot this time.
There you go.
I also recorded them checking the pumpkins. You can even hear them bouncing off my vehicle. The guy from Safeway here went over there with me, and he picked up a couple of the pumpkins and put them back in a cart and brought them back over here. Yeah. Do what?
I'm sorry, that's terrible.
Oh, on the bright side, at least you're not dealing with it.
Right. Enough to deal with.
You don't have to have any tobacco, is it?
I don't. I was gonna go snipe hunting real quick. I'm all fresh out. Oh, you got a smoke thing too.
What?
The smoke grenades.
Oh, no. That's a mortar.
Oh, that's a mortar?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's launch tube and back.
it looks exactly like the smoke ones that I have.
Hey, you wouldn't have to have a cigarette, would you?
No, yeah, but I feel like you would know. You know, you gotta look at my
Scan items one at a time, placing them in the bagging area. Welcome. If you have your club card, please scan it now. Scan items one at a time, placing them in the bagging area after each scan. For items without barcodes, weigh your item. Please touch accept weight to move your item to the bag. 47 cents. If you have your club card, please scan it now. Your card has been accepted. How many store-provided bags did you use? Your total is 40. Please insert coin, then insert bill. Please wait. System processing. Please remember to take your receipt and all of your change. Thank you. Well,
Alright, I'm gonna try to get to the bathroom before the doors close. Sir, if I take these back there with you. Alright. I already paid for them. Yep. Thank you all for having me. Oh, here's an interesting one.
The electric drill shears attachment cutter nibbler is not only suitable for DIY enthusiasts, but also can meet the diverse work needs of professional contractors. Really? The electric drill shears attachment cutter.
Blast drill! What is the weapon that has become almost synonymous with explosive action sequences in movies and video games alike? Which armament can you find in the hands of action heroes like Rambo or in popular video games such as Call of Duty? Which piece of military hardware has not only dominated real-world combat, but also made its mark on pop culture? The answer is none other than the RPG-7, the quintessential action movie prop in video game power. This weapon's unmistakable silhouette continues to be a symbol of explosive action and thrilling combat sequences. Combat Tech.
It's actually the actual combat that makes it so exciting to people. It's weird.
Originating from the German Panzerfaust anti-tank weapon, the design of the RPG has seen many revisions and modifications, culminating in the widely used RPG-7. Despite the successful field trials of the RPG-4 in 1961, the superior range and armor-piercing capabilities of the RPG-7 made it the weapon of choice for the Soviet armed forces that year. Now, the RPG-7 is employed by military forces in over 40 countries, and is reportedly used by various terrorist organizations across the Middle East and Latin America. There are numerous versions of the RPG-7, each refined and optimized for specific operational scenarios and targets. Some notable models include the standard RPG-7B, RPG-7D paratrooper model, the lighter Chinese Type 69 RPG, and various local variants produced by countries that have adopted the system.
Chinese Type
The
56.
RPG-7 consists of two main parts, the launcher and the grenade. The launcher component of the RPG-7 is a
Everybody's got a Chinese-made RPG.
This tube,
Or Bulgarian.
40 millimeters in diameter,
Over 9 million of them are made.
50 millimeters in length, weighs in at 7 kilograms. A layer of wood is wrapped around the middle of the tube, offering thermal insulation to protect the user. Its end features a flare design. Typically, the launcher employs an optical sight, but it also includes an iron sight for backup. For low light or nighttime operations, there are optional infrared and night sights available. The RPG is more than just a singular weapon. It's a versatile platform capable of launching different types of grenades depending on the scenario.
Yep.
As such, it's essential for the operator to understand the functionality and ideal usage of each grenade type. High explosive rounds, as their name suggests, are designed for widespread damage, particularly against soft targets or infrastructure. High explosive anti-tank rounds, on the other hand, are specially designed for dealing with armored vehicles. They use a huge charge to focus their explosiveness to a small point, penetrating thick armor. Like AK-47, RPG-7 is also very easy to use. To prepare an RPG-7 for firing, the operator attaches a propellant charge to the end of a warhead. This consists of a stabilizing pipe with 4 folded fins and an additional 2 at the rear. Once assembled, the projectile is loaded into the front of the RPG launcher and aligned with a trigger mechanism. On pulling the trigger, the grenade is propelled out of the tube at a speed of roughly 384 feet per second, or 117 meters per second, by the gas's pressure. This sudden acceleration activates a piezoelectric fuse, which ignites the primer, setting off the squib of nitro and kick-starting the rocket propulsion system. This sustainer motor ensures the grenade continues along its path. A specially designed socket in the breech block helps to counteract recoil during firing. Once the exhaust gases have been expelled to the rear of the launcher unit, the operator can reload the weapon. To prevent accidental detonation, impact grenades must be unarmed until fired. The propellant explosion that propels the grenade out of the launcher usually triggers the automatic arming system. In some designs, the grenade's acceleration or rotation during flight arms the detonator. The backup time delay works through the same fuse mechanism as the rocket. A spark ignites slow-burning material within the fuse, and after about 4 seconds, it burns through completely. This end of the delay element is connected to the detonator. burning material reaches the end, it ignites the detonator material, causing the warhead to explode. Exploration of the RPG-7. This iconic launcher bridges the divide between real-world battlefields and fictional action scenes, a testament to its design and impact. Its complexity beneath the simplicity reminds us of the fascinating world of military tech. So remember this knowledge next time you spot it or in game. There's more RPG-7 than what meets the eye. If you love this journey, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more captivating deep dives in the marvels of combat technology. And if you haven't had a chance to fire one of these bad boys, we really would like to hear about it in the comments.
Yep, so that's about the RPG-7. The RPG-2 is even simpler. It's just the black powder charge. Obviously, I like history. Oh, looks like Officer Loftman's here. So I'll lock the door and pretend he doesn't exist. No, it's not Officer Loftman. I don't actually recognize this color. However, he's not committing any crimes and he's not harassing me, so no reason to point the camera at him and be a dick. For all I know, he might just be a corrections officer. He definitely took a good look over here. I guess he likes my car. Turn on my key a little bit. Make sure we get a charge on my phone. Thank goodness I got permission to be here at least tonight. Cops are assholes. Oh, we get a grenade explanation. All types of grenades explained. Well, that'll help you.
People who really rule you.
Listen to that commercial.
This pile of soup is the aftermath of a grenade going off. It may not be what you expected to see, because when people...
Alright. Maybe I should put one on about landmines. That's probably better.
Sergeant Gary Michael Rose received the Medal of Honor for his actions during a covert operation in the Vietnam War. Rose was serving as a medic with the 5th Special Forces Group and local warfighters during an operation that took place September 11th through the 14th in 1970. The company was in deep enemy-controlled territory when they were engaged by a well-armed and a numerically superior hostile force. So let's just quickly run down a couple of snippets of the 3 days worth of intense fighting during the operation. Number 1, Rose used his own body for cover while he was administering aid to a fellow soldier. Number 2, he was blown off of his feet by an RPG. He dusted himself off and continued treating casualties. Number 3, after 3 days of fighting and multiple failed medevac attempts, Rose's evac helicopter was shot down with him inside. Rose crawled out of the wreckage and instantly started pulling others out. He started performing aid until a secondary helicopter came. These are just small glimpses of the career of Sergeant Gary Michael Rose. Check out the links below to learn their full story. Sergeant Gary Michael Rose received the Medal of Honor.
There's an interesting one. Let's find out about the weapon that knocked him off his feet. The RPG-2.
The RPG-2 is little remembered today, eclipsed as it is by both its famous descendant, the RPG-7, and its illustrious forebears, the Panzerfausts. So it's easy to forget that it was a remarkable weapon that provided soldiers of its day with the ability to punish any armoured vehicle at a staggeringly low price. It's also not widely known that this sheer simplicity and effectiveness means it still enjoys use in conflicts today, despite more powerful weapons being available. Design of the RPG-2 began in 1947, and it would go into service in 1954. Launched from the shoulder, the weapon itself is extremely simple in construction, consisting of a straight steel tube with a 40mm diameter. This is fitted with iron flip-up front and rear sights and a pistol housing that contains the trigger, safety and percussion firing pin. The projectiles themselves are also very simple to produce. Essentially an 80mm diameter warhead, the PG-2 is the most common munition produced for the RPG-2. With a high explosive anti-tank shaped charge warhead, otherwise known as heat, the PG-2 could penetrate 200mm of armour plate. To operate, a separate propelling charge is screwed onto the warhead, which holds the pop-out fins for stabilisation in flight. The RPG-2 has an effective range of 100 metres against moving targets and 150 metres against stationary ones. Maximum range of the projectile is 600 metres, though later models feature a self-destruct that detonates the warhead at 460 metres. The lack of complexity made the RPG-2 an extremely cheap and simple weapon to manufacture, and this means it was looked down upon when it first came to the attention of Western militaries in the 1950s. It was viewed as little more than a slight improvement on the rifle grenades and bazookas then in service. The fact that it was replaced by its successor, the RPG-7, in 1961, seemed to confirm this idea. But this failed to recognise the sheer utility of this weapon, something that became abundantly clear when US forces came on the receiving end of it during the Vietnam War. Though it is undoubtedly an inferior weapon to the RPG-7, the 2 enjoys 2 critical facets that mean it is still being manufactured today. The simplicity of the construction of both the launcher and its projectiles, as well as the system's ability to fire a variety of different types of warhead. This utility means the weapon still enjoys high regard in an area and roles that are far from its original Soviet designer's intentions. Ideal for close-range ambushes and fighting, the RPG-2 still sees production in the regions controlled by the ethnic armed organisations in Burma. Fighting the central government for decades, these EAOs are heavily reliant on outside arms, but have in the last 20 years become far more involved in developing their own arms industries for their defence, notably the Wa and the Kachin. The sheer simplicity of the launcher and projectile, combined with the ability to take both anti-armour and anti-personnel warheads, means that for these forces, the RPG-2 is an almost perfect weapon. This has led to these groups developing warheads that suit their own particular needs. Reliant on close-range ambushes in normally heavy undergrowth, the EAOs have found, like the Vietnamese before them, that the RPG-2 provides a great firepower leveller against forces that are, on paper, better equipped. With fighting not looking like diminishing both in Burma or in the broader MENA area for any foreseeable future, the RPG-2 can be expected to keep providing service to a whole range of users for the foreseeable future. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. If you're interested in military history or current affairs, please visit militarymatters.online.
Now let's learn about bazooka, the Panzerfaust, and the Panzerschreck. I haven't seen this one. And they're taking open to World War II.
There are many iconic weapons from World War II. In today's video, we will talk about the most well-known anti-tank weapons, the bazooka, the Panzerschreck and the Panzerfaust. How they were developed, their capabilities and their use. First, let's start with the bazooka, or its proper name, the rocket launcher M1, which is a well-known sight in every World War II documentary and war movies. The origins of the bazooka go way back to World War I. Near the end of World War I, Robert H. Goddard were working on his rocket propulsion project and had the idea of the rocket launcher weapon. He proposed his rocket propulsion idea to the army in many ways, as mobile artillery, field weapons and more. He also proposed a tube-based rocket launcher to the army, the precursor of the bazooka, and demonstrated it at Aberdeen in November 1918 successfully with his co-worker Clarence N. Hickman, but after the armistice was signed, the development was discontinued. Hickman later became head of the National Defense Research Committee, and amongst other projects, he guided the completion of the bazooka. But the rocket propellant is just one part of the rocket launcher. To be successful, the weapon needed the shape-charged warhead as well. So let's take a look how and when the two were combined. In the US Army, the first shape-charged weapon was the infantry grenade M10. It had good armor-piercing capabilities as it could penetrate 60 mm of armor, but it was too heavy and cumbersome to throw or to be used as a rifle grenade, which made its use very limited. A smaller, lighter version was created, the M9 rifle grenade, but the army still needed a more capable anti-tank weapon for the infantry. In 1942, US Army Colonel Leslie Skinner gave the task of developing a delivery system for the M10 grenade to Lieutenant Edward Uhl, who created a rocket-propelled version. And by June, the M1 rocket launcher and the M6 rocket were ready. The original M6 rocket was found unreliable, but it was quickly upgraded to the improved M6A1 design. In 1943, the M6A3 version was introduced with a round head which reduced the ricochet possibility if hit the target in a steep angle. Over its service life, the bazooka received several improvements based on field experience. On early models, the rockets sometimes stick in the tubes, causing detonation, so this was corrected quickly. There were several problems with the batteries of the ignition system, so later these were replaced with magneto-type ignition. In the late years of World War II, the original 60mm bazooka started losing its effectiveness against the newer, better armored tanks, so development started for a bigger 90mm version, but this only entered service after the end of the war as rocket launcher M20. Now let's take a look at the bazooka's variants and specifications. The original M1 rocket launcher, produced between June 1942 and July 1943, length 137 centimeters, caliber 60 millimeters, weight 5.9 kilograms, maximum range about 400 meters, effective range about 140 meters. M1A1 rocket launcher. These had similar specifications to the M1, but had several improvements, like the improved electrical system and the new M6A1 rockets. They were produced between July and October 1943. M9 rocket launcher. These used a longer tube, about 155 centimeters, and so weighted a little more, about 6.5 kilograms. They also used the new M6A3 rocket. M9A1 rocket launcher. These had similar specifications to the M9, but used improved sides. M18 rocket launcher. This was an experimental aluminum version of the M9A1 rocket launcher. M20 rocket launcher. This was the original prototype for the Super Bazooka, featuring 88.9mm caliber. Its development started after the examination of the German 88mm Panzerschrecks. This weapon could penetrate up to 11 inches of armor and had an extended range, but only entered active service.
Youngins in a red color.
M20A1 rocket launcher. This was the improved
Say
production
hi.
variant of the M20 rocket launcher. Production started in 1952.
Goodbye.
Length 152 centimeters. Caliber 90 millimeters. Weight 6.5 kilograms. Maximum range about 900 meters. Effective range 200 meters. M20B1 rocket launcher. This was a lightweight aluminum version of the original M20 rocket launcher. M20A1B1 rocket launcher. This was an M20B1 rocket launcher with the A1 improvements. M25 experimental 3-shot bazooka. This was an experimental tripod version with a top-mounted magazine. The combat history of the bazooka started in September 1942, when some 600 of them were shipped to the British in Egypt. They were impressed with the performance, but decided not to use it, because the terrain in North Africa didn't provide enough cover to use a short-range weapon like this. The US Army deployed them later during and after Operation Torch, but it didn't have great success with the early M6 rockets and untrained crews. The German forces managed to capture some of the early bazookas in Africa, and that led to the Panzerschreck development on the German side, but more on that later. Bazookas were also used later in the invasion of Sicily, where they started to see some progress and managed to knock out a few tanks, including a Tiger tank with a lucky shot. It was quickly realized that the best option to use the bazooka against tanks was to hit the side armor, or if possible, using an elevated position to hit the top armor of a tank, where it usually has the thinnest armor plates. During the Allied offensive on Normandy, there were occasions of fitting bazookas on surveillance aircraft, namely US Major Charles Carpenter used his L-4 Grasshopper plane to damage and knock out half-tracks and tanks, gaining the nickname Bazooka Charlie. In the later years of the war, the effectiveness of bazookas dropped as the newer German tanks were more heavily armored, and most German tanks used the shirts and armor skirts. On the Pacific,
Gotta love it, right? Now I got a shit ton of pennies. Almost sounds like a Geiger counter. Anyway, one of the gentlemen here at Safeway was there just a second ago, and that guy, on that youngin, screamed the N-word out the window. A same red car. First time I was trying to point at it, but the sign here was in the way. So it was difficult to show. This stuff really ain't necessary. I guess I gotta relocate a little bit. Police are cowards nationwide. However, I'm aware of it, which makes it easy to counter. I didn't travel far, but it's a different location, you know? Everybody's solution is to move. Hey Sean, you know, if you move, that won't happen anymore. Are you sure? That sucks. There it goes. I like the way things work. It makes it difficult to sleep with shit like that going on, you know? Not that it matters. People think just because I have a penis that magically it means that stuff like this shouldn't affect me. Like because I have a penis that people threatening to kill my friends and family shouldn't affect me. Well, why the fuck wouldn't it? It's pretty horrible shit to have happen. I'm tired of fucking living like this. God damn it. I didn't do anything fucking wrong. All I did was show that I told the fucking truth. That's not a fucking evil thing to do. Asking people to leave me alone isn't evil either. But no, it's wrong for me to ask people to leave me alone, isn't it? It's wrong for me to go to the police, isn't it? But it's not wrong for my predators. Huh. Fucking pieces of shit. It's fucking horse shit. I should have been allowed an honest fucking day in court against Natalie Bollinger. I should have been allowed an honest day in court against her fucking family and against the goddamn cops. You fucking pieces of shit. Fucking 7 goddamn years of this hell. You fucking pieces of shit. But yeah, sure, must be my fault because I spoke out, huh?